It's hard to believe that somebody you know would actually be an abuser of people they love, people they live with, and people they raise.
Every day, more than 3 women are murdered by their intimate partner in the United States.
Domestic violence is the #1 cause of injury for women in the United States between the ages of 14 to 44. Psychological trauma is linked to suicide, especially trauma that is violent in nature.
25 to 54% of women experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime, and as a result, women are 5 times more likely to commit suicide.
Approximately 30% of women report physical abuse by their intimate partner.
Every year, over 1 million women are stalked, 59% of whom are from intimate partners.
Women, on average, will leave their abuser 8 times. And of those women, up to 35% of them will consider taking their own life.
Women who are murdered by their intimate partner constitute 30% of female victims, and 75% of them are killed during the separation. Every year, over 1 million women are violated and abused by their intimate partner. These statistics are real because I know I was one of them. They can be your mother, your daughter, your best friend, your neighbor, your sister. I was one of the lucky ones to get out. Please be aware of domestic violence.
Exposure to violence increases the risk of suicide, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. I know because I am a survivor of domestic violence.
They can hide who they are very easily. They are friendly, lovable, and compassionate around their friends, but around the victim, he sometimes pretends to be the victim, not to be the abuser. The people around you, your friends and family, don't realize how bad it gets for you. And when you leave, it makes you look like the person who causes the problems. So, fear of the abuse and the violence that may happen would oftentimes cause me to want to leave. I was scared of leaving him. And our relationship was very long, over 40 years. It got complicated and difficult to leave. He'd always talk. They can talk you back into coming back by being cunning and loving and buying gifts.
With domestic violence, a cycle of abuse occurs and gradually escalates, becoming more and more violent and abusive. All forms of domestic abuse are psychologically damaging and designed to control and confuse the victim. Domestic abuse is a pattern of behaviors causing one's partner physical, sexual, or psychological harm, pain, or injury. These behaviors are used to intimidate the victim, ultimately to maintain power and control over them. The victim experiences feelings of powerlessness, entrapment, and loss regarding their dignity, independence, and safety.
After experiencing the cycle of abuse 3 or more times, the woman develops a form of PTSD known as battered women syndrome.
The victim develops symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. She may have nightmares, become numb, detached, or anxious, and have trouble sleeping. After having tried and failed multiple times to stop the abuse, she develops what is called learned helplessness. She may blame herself for being weak or pathetic, thinking that she is the sick one for staying. While this isn't true, her abuser reinforces this type of thinking. The third symptom of battered woman's syndrome is where she may eventually resort to using self-destructive coping strategies, such as using drugs, alcohol, or attempting suicide as a result of the abuse.
Domestic abuse affects the entire family system, and the devastating effects can last generations, perpetuating a cycle of abuse. Violence is normalized, making it difficult for them to identify what is acceptable.
By growing up with domestic violence, those kids are trained early on how to behave and respond to abuse.
Having been brought up in this culture, the dysfunctional response is second nature. Research has shown that when a child experiences this kind of psychological distress, it often predicts future experiences of victimization.
She develops a culture of pretense where abuse is not always acknowledged or recognized, and to those outside of the relationship, everything appears to be normal. Having a strong support system is fundamental to the victim's ability to recover. She needs to be presented with informed choices and to feel supported as she processes what is happening to her. She is abused into believing that she is to blame for the violence.
Survival is determined by her perception of how others will respond and by her very real fear of further abuse if she exposes the violence.
Women may minimize the abuse because they may need to pretend that everything is normal in order to psychologically survive the abuse. Once she is able to see the abuse, she is often shocked, devastated, and feels foolish for not seeing it before. Coming to terms with the abuse is more than just hard for women, it's usually traumatic. She can't bear the thought of being criticized, judged, humiliated, or rejected by others for what is happening to her inside her home. The woman's perception of those outside the relationship and what they think is very important. As difficult as it may be to hear, having others confirm that her relationship is not normal and is actually domestic abuse is often the catalyst she needs to clearly assess her situation. Abuse is not normal relational conflict. It's not an anger issue, which is a feeling, but a control issue, which is a choice. Unless he gets professional help and wants to change, the abuse and violence will only escalate. It's time for women to stand up to abuse and take control back. There are services available to help and support women in creating a safe plan. Try calling the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Women who are trapped in a cycle of abuse may continue to act like everything is fine because they don't have the energy, strength, resources, or knowledge to get out of their situation. These women need and rely on support from others and from professional services. If someone discloses abuse, remain supportive and withhold judgment. Let her know that there is help available to her, that she is not alone, and that the abuse is not her fault. Organizations that support victims of abuse might consider partnering with police and other emergency services. Having a resource kit on hand is a great way to help support women, getting them the information they need to identify the abuse, as well as information about services that are available to help.
You know, you believe when they tell you that they won't do it anymore and they'll seek help. Your safety can be compromised in an instant.